Okay, today we're going to be talking about measures of variation. Measures of variation are used to describe the distribution of data. Range is one measure of variation. Quartiles are values that divide a set of data into 4 equal parts. So let's look at an example of how we find measures of variation and what measures of variation really mean. So the numbers below represent the number of hours teens spend online each week. The numbers have been ordered from least to greatest. So you can see that we have a set of numbers that are ordered from least to greatest. We've divided the numbers into the lower half and the upper half. Now the median of the data is going to be 13.8. Because we don't have a middle number here, we find the average between 13.4 and 14.2. So if you had a middle number, the middle number would be the median, just like when we found measures of central tendency on the last video. The median here is 13.8. Since there is no middle number, we found the mean of the two middle numbers. Now here's where some vocabulary is going to come in, some more vocabulary. So feel free to pause and to write. And if you have any questions, make sure you write those down on your notes and you can ask them tomorrow in class. So if you look at the lower half of the data, we find the middle number. The middle number of the lower half is the median of the lower half. We call that the lower quartile. You will also see us abbreviate it LQ. So the median of the lower half of a set of data is the lower quartile. So we divided the data in half. We found the median of the lower half. That is our lower quartile. If you look at the upper half, the median, the middle number, is 14.9. We call that our upper quartile, or UQ. So 14.9 is the upper quartile. Now you may be wondering what happens if there is no middle number. What happens if this is an even number of data? Then again, just like the median here, we would average the two numbers, and we'll do an example like that in a moment. So we can say that one half of the data lie between the lower quartile and the upper quartile. So here's our lower quartile, here's our upper quartile. Half of the data lies there. There's a little more vocabulary. The interquartile range is the range of the middle half of the data. And here's the key. It is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. And that means we're going to subtract or find the difference between the upper and lower quartiles, and that will give us our interquartile range. And if you think about that word, interquartile range, that makes sense, that it's between these upper and lower quartiles. Data that are more than 1.5 times the value of the interquartile range beyond the quartiles are called outliers. So remember, you can pause, write this down, write down any questions you may have that we can answer tomorrow. Now we're going to actually look at an example. We are going to be finding the measures of variation for this data below. Take a second to write down these numbers. We're going to be finding range, the lower quartile, the median, the interquartile range, upper quartile, and the outliers. So the first thing that we have to do with these numbers is we have to order them from least to greatest. I like to spread out my data so that I will have plenty of room to write in lower half, upper half, and the quartiles and other labels. So I've divided this information into the lower half. I have a middle number and then the upper half. My median is 28 because it's in the middle of the data. My lower quartile is 27 because it's in the middle of the lower half. My upper quartile is 30 because it's in the middle of the upper half. You might take a second to rewind or pause and write down a question you might have about this information. Now we know how to find range because it was in our notes on the last video. Range is the largest number minus the smallest number. 51 minus 24 is 27, so the range of the data is 27. So we can go ahead and fill that in. Lower quartile was 27. Upper quartile was 30. Remember, those are the medians of the upper and lower half of the data. Our median is 28. And our range is 27. Now the interquartile range that we talked about earlier is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So upper quartile minus lower quartile, which is 30 minus 27, and our interquartile range is 3. Now, outliers. There is a method for finding outliers. Sometimes numbers look like they could be an outlier, but we have to do the math to make sure that it actually is the outlier. Here are the steps. Step 1, you need to find the interquartile range. We already did that in this problem above. Step 2, we're going to multiply the interquartile range by 1.5. So we take 3 and multiply it by 1.5. And we always use 1.5. That is our multiplier. Step 3, we are going to subtract 4.5, which is this number right here that we got after we multiplied the interquartile range by 1.5. We're going to subtract 4.5 from the lower quartile. Our lower quartile was 27. We subtract 4.5, and the number is 22.5. So data less than 22.5 is an outlier. We do not have any number lower than 22.5. So 24 would not be an outlier. Step 4, we're going to add 4.5 to the upper quartile, and we get 34.5. 34.5, anything above that is going to be an outlier. 51 is greater than 34.5, so it is an outlier. Now I would like for you to try one of these on your own. Remember, pause, write down any questions, rewind if you need clarification, and make sure you ask those tomorrow in class. Now I want you to try a couple on your own. I have the answers to the first one with the method and the process, and the second one we will answer in class, or we will check your answer in class tomorrow. So you might want to pause here, work this problem out, and then come back and check the process. So by now you should have done the problem, and you should have ordered your numbers from least to greatest, divided the upper and lower half of the data. Your lower quartile is 30, your upper quartile is 40.5, and your median was 36. Now I like to bring down and almost make a diagram here where I show that I've subtracted 40.5 and 30 to get 10.5, which is my interquartile range. Here I subtracted 24 from 44 and I got a range of 20. So check your work and make sure that you got those correct. Now for the outliers, I multiplied my interquartile range, 10.5, times 1.5, because 1.5 is the number that we use every time, and I got 15.75. I then subtracted 15.75 from 30 to get 14.25, and I checked to see if I had a number below 14.25, and I did not. And then I checked, I did 40.5 5 minus 15.75, I'm sorry, plus 15.75, and I got 56.25. I had no data that was less than 14.25 or greater than 56.25. Therefore, I had no outliers. So your answer should look like this. Median was 30, range was 20, lower quartile 30, upper quartile 40.5, interquartile range 10.5, and no outliers. Remember, write down any questions you may have about any of this work. And the last question, I want you to find the measures of variation, which includes median, range, lower quartile, upper quartile, interquartile range, and outliers for this data. And we will look at the answer tomorrow in class.